What's up everyone, welcome back to another episode of AWS tutorial, and today I'll show you how to build a file upload system with React.js and a serverless API in the backend, and we're going to host everything on AWS. So at the end of the tutorial, you'll be able to build something that looks like this, where you can choose a file that you want to upload, and then after you upload that, or after you choose that, you can see the file details. And you can just hit upload, and then in the backend you can just do whatever you want. You can do calculations on the data, or you can just add more things to the data, or combine the data and then store it in S3 or send it to someone. For this tutorial, I'm just gonna add some text to it and then save it to our S3 bucket. So after you hit upload, it's gonna say that the file was uploaded successfully. So this is what we're gonna build today. So without further ado, let's get to it. Alright, let's build out the front-end system first. And in order to create a React.js app, you need to have node.js and npm installed in your machine. And if you don't have that, you can just go to this website and follow the instruction to download that. And I think it detects your system here. And after you get that installed, you can just open a empty folder with VS Code. And what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to do terminal, new terminal. And then we're going to use npx to create a React.js app. And if you don't have npx installed, you can just do npm install npx like this. So what I'm going to do is npx create React app, and then give it a name. I'll just call it file upload system, but you can call it whatever you want. Hit enter. I think this is going to take a minute, so I'm going to pause the video and then come back. Alright, seems like it's done. And seems like we have an error. Permission denied. Oh, this one doesn't matter because we're not going to use this file at all. And now what we're going to do is we're going to cd into the project. And then we're going to do a npm start to make sure that it's working first. Okay, seems like it's working. So now let's go back to VS Code, do a Control-C. And then we're going to first delete the files that we don't need, just for simplicity's sake. So we don't need this. And then under source, we're not gonna need this. So I'm gonna do a delete here. And then in the index file, we're gonna delete this. And then we don't need that as well. And then inside app.js, I'm gonna delete this. And then delete everything here. And then we also remove everything here. We're gonna build everything from scratch. So the first thing we're gonna do here is we're gonna import React and then component from React. And now we're gonna define app as a class, which has a couple of states. One is called selected file. We're gonna instantiate that as null. And then we have a property called file uploaded, let's say successfully. We're going to instantiate that as false. And then we're going to have a render function that returns a tag, a div. Inside we're going to have a h2 tag that says, and then we're going to have a h3 tag that says something like, and then we're going to have another div, and inside we're going to have a input that has a type of file because we're going to upload a file. And then on change, we're going to call a function called onFileChange. And then we have a button that allows us to upload a file to our S3 bucket. And on click, we're going to call a function called fileUpload. We're going to define them later. And the button just going to label as upload. And then finally, we're going to have something that displays the file details. We're going to define this function later as well. Alright, first thing we're going to define this function, which is an arrow function that takes in an event. And we're just going to do one thing here, which is to set the state of the file to be the first one. And then we're going to define this. which is also an error function, except it doesn't take in any event information. We are first going to construct a form data object, and then we're gonna append some property to it. The first one is just the name. I'll just call it demo file or something like that. And then the second one is the file content, which is just the file, the selected file that we have defined earlier. And then the next one is the name of the file, selected file name, like that. And next, what we're going to do next is to call the API to upload the file, but since right now we only have the front end, we don't have the back end built out yet. So we're gonna just log out the file information for now, form data, and then we're gonna set the selected file to be null, back to null because we already uploaded it. And then we're gonna do set the file upload successful to be true. And then finally, we're gonna define this function to display the file data depending on the situation or what state we are at. We're going to have a if condition here. So the first condition we're going to have is if we already have a file selected for upload, we are going to display the file detail to the user, just to tell them what he or she has already uploaded to the system, or selected to be uploaded to the system rather. We're going to have a h2 tag that says file details, and then we're going to have a paragraph that shows the file name, and we can get that from the selected file name, and then we can show them what type of file that is, type. And then lastly, we're going to have a last modified timestamp, and we're going to get that from the selected file as well. Last modify to date string, and let's instantiate that to take in an empty string if it doesn't have it. And then we have a second condition that checks. So if the file is uploaded successfully, we're going to show the user a message. Now let's just have a break here. We're going to have a h4 tag here, and then we're going to tell the user that the file has been successfully uploaded. Oh, I think I forgot a return here. And that should do it. And then lastly, if the user does not select anything or it has not uploaded anything, we were just going to return something or a message called something like that. Okay, so I think that's everything, and now let's test it and see if it's working. Okay, seems like everything is working properly. Let's move everything to the middle so that it looks better. So in the in here, let's just call that container, and then in the app.css file, we're gonna do text align center. If I do refresh, and now everything is in the middle, so it looks good. And it tells us to choose a file and then press the upload button to upload. And now let's create a dummy file for us to test everything. So I'm just gonna do like a test text file. Let's say something like this is just a test file. Do an inspect on it first. Click on the console. And then we're gonna choose the file that we just created. So hit choose file, and then navigate to the directory. And that's the file that we just created. So hit select. Oh, that's an error. Let's see what happened. Oh, files, not file. Now it should be fine. Let's refresh it. Click choose file. Let's try one more time. Oh man, another error. Let's see what that is. Last modified. I think it should be last modified date. Okay. Let's refresh and upload it again, and hopefully this time works. Alright, there you go. Now we can get all the information here. And if I do upload, it's going to show me that your file has been successfully uploaded. Okay, so now the front end is working, and now let's move on to build out the backend system. Alright, so right now I'm on the homepage of the AWS console. So step number one is to create the IAM role for the Lambda function to use for the API. So I'm going to type in IAM, and then hit roles, and then create role. We're going to choose Lambda because the Lambda function is going to use it. Hit next. We are going to attach two policies to it. One is the S3 full access, and then the other one is CloudWatch log full access. So I'm going to type in S3 full access. Click that, and then CloudWatch log full access. And then hit next. Next, give it a name. I'll just call it file upload system role. Hit create. Alright, so it's done. And now let's create a Lambda function. So I'll go to the Lambda console. Hit create. Give it a name. I'll just call it file upload system backend. We're going to use node.js. For permission, we're going to choose the role that we just created. I believe it's that one. And then hit create. So before I do anything, I'm going to change two things here. One is the timeout, and the other one is the memory, just in case the file is too big for it to process. So I'm going to click on configure, general, and then I'm going to change that to be 1 minute and 500 megabytes should be enough. And then hit save. And then next, we're going to create a S3 bucket to host or to store our files after we upload it. So I'm just going to type S3, hit create bucket. I'll just call it Ginmeister file upload storage. Enable versioning, and then enable server-side encryption. Hit create. Alright, so it's done. So we're going to use that to store our files after the user uploads it. And then next, we're going to create the API gateway for our API. So I'm just going to type in API gateway. And then we're going to scroll down. Make sure that you select the RESTful API, REST API here, because that's what we're going to use for the tutorial. So let's click on Build here. Hit OK. New API. I'll just call it File Upload System API. I keep it as regional. Create API. So for this tutorial, I'm just going to focus on the implementation of it. I have a separate video that talks about Serverless API and everything you need to know about using the API gateway authentications and stuff like that. I'll include a link down below, so if you're interested, you can check that out. First thing first, we are going to create a resource. We're going to call it maybe file upload. And then make sure that you enable course. And then create resource. And then inside here, we're going to create a method, which is a post method. Hit the check mark. And then we're going to use the Lambda function. Make sure that you check the proxy integration here so that it gives you all the default properties. And then we're going to choose the Lambda function that we just created. I believe it's that one. We're just going to use the default timeout. Hit save. Hit OK. So normally you're gonna have a health check endpoint here to test out your API, but for simplicity, I'm just gonna have only one endpoint here to test things out. Another thing I want to mention is that this API gateway right now is open to the world, so anyone can access it. So if your API is going to be in production, you may want to use the API keys to restrict access and require people to authenticate. I have a separate videos for that. I'll include a link down below so you can check that out if you're interested. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to promote that to the production. So deploy API. Let's call it prod deploy. And that's our endpoint. And before we do anything, let's go back to the Lambda function to write out the code for our API. So hit on code. So for this tutorial, I'm just gonna write everything in the Lambda console because I don't require any external libraries or anything. So I'm gonna delete everything here. First thing first, we're gonna do some imports. So the first one is the file processing service. We're going to define this file later. And then the second one is a util function or a util file. We're going to define that later as well. And then we're going to have a constant that is the path, which is what we define in our API gateway file upload. And then in the handler, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a console.log just to log out the request event, just to see how it looks like. And then we're going to define a response, and then we're going to have a switch statement. We're going to have it as true, and then we're going to have a case switch. Then we're going to check the HTTP method to see if it's a post, and then the path is equal to our file upload path. If that matches, we're going to set the response to be this. We're going to define this method later. Just going to take the body, and then we're going to do a break. And then for everything else, we will just gonna set the response to be, we're going to define this function later as well, 404. And then finally, we're going to return the response to the client. Oh, there's a typo. Okay, and that should be, wow, there's a lot of typos here. Okay, now let's define this file in the root directory. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define the AWS parameter. We're just going to use the AWS SDK, and then we're going to define an S3 client. And then we're going to use the util library that we're going to define later. And then we're going to define the bucket name. And I think we can just copy this. And then for the subfolder, we can just call it data maybe. And then we're going to have a async function called process that takes in a request body. And then we're going to parse the file name from the request body. Before we do anything here, let me just show you how the request body looks like. So remember here we have the event object, and then we just pass in the body from the event object. And this is how the event body looks like, or event object looks like. It has the source, it has the path and HTTP method and stuff. And then all the way at the end, it has the body, which is a string. And since we used the data form to upload it, it automatically added the boundary text here. And we don't want that. We just want the file name and the file content. So we need to think of a way to parse it. So let's go back to the Lambda function. And I already have this written down before, so I'm just going to copy and paste it. So what it does here is it will split everything by the new line, and then select that and split everything by the semicolon and then by the equal sign, and then remove the quotes from the name, get the file name, and then next we're going to extract the file content. And I already have that written down before as well, so I'm just going to copy and paste it. And then now we can just do some modifications to the file content. You can do calculations on it. You can do additions of text to it as well. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add the timestamp to it, to the end of the file content. So I need to do file content. I need to change that to let because I'm modifying it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 new lines to it. And then I'm going to say process timestamp. And then I'm going to do new date to ISO string. And then next, we're going to define the param that we're going to use to save the file. First thing is the bucket name, key. We're going to do the subfolder first, and then do a slash, and then we're going to do the file name. And then next, we have the body, which is the file content. And that should do it. Oh, there's a typo here. New date, not new data. And then next, we're going to do an await s3, the put object, params. And then we're going to just do a promise. And then finally, we're going to return a 200 back to the client. And that should be everything. And now we're going to define this helper function, a helper file, .js. All right, this one is pretty simple. We're only going to have one function here that takes in the status code, and then the body, if it has anything, which is optional, it will just return a status code to be status code, and then the headers. So this is very important. Make sure that you have this. Otherwise, it's not going to allow your client to request the endpoint origin. Set that to be start content type application JSON. And then we're just going to do a stringify on the body, which is optional. You don't have to have it. And then lastly, we're gonna export this function. Oh, I think we forgot to do it here. Module dot export process to be process. Okay, that should be everything. And now let's deploy it. And now I think we can just go back to the front end and tell the client to call the API. So let's go to API gateway, stages, prod. Let's copy this endpoint. Then go back to the front end. So in here, call API. So what we can do is we can just use Axio to do a post on the API. But before we do that, we need to add the module. So let's go to package.json, and then let's add it here. Axio, and then specify a version number. And I think that's what we're going to use. And then in the app.js, we're going to import that Axios from Axios. And then here, we're just going to do a post, copy this, fix the space, and then we have file upload, I think. Let's see. Yep, file upload. And then we're going to pass in the form data as the request body. And then we're going to do a .then, which is an arrow function. And we can just move everything to be inside. And we don't need this. Alright, so I think that's done. But before we can test it, we need to do a npm installed to install the Axio module. Okay, so that is done. And now we can do a npm start to test it locally. Alright, let's choose a file. Choose the same file. That one, hit open, and then hit upload. Alright, your file is successfully uploaded. And now if we go back to the S3 bucket, we should be able to see the file. And let's download that just to take a look to see how it looks like. Alright, so it contains all the contents we have written down, plus the timestamp that we just added from the Lambda function or the API. Alright, so everything's working locally now. And now let's create a separate S3 bucket to host our front end so that we have a web page. So let's go back to S3, create bucket. I just call it Junmeister file upload system front end. I'm gonna uncheck this to allow public access to read it. I need to check this. Enable, enable. Hit create. And let's click into it. And under permissions, scroll all the way down. In bucket policy, we're gonna add something here. And I can just go to junmeister.com, S3, scroll all the way down. And then we're gonna copy this. One thing we need to do is we need to change this on to be this. Hit save. Unexpected error. Oh, there's a space here. Okay, how about now? Okay, so that is done. And then one last thing we have to do is under properties, scroll all the way down here under static website hosting. We hit edit, hit enable. And then we're going to do index.html and do the same thing here. Hit save. Okay, and now we are ready to build out the front end and upload the necessary files to the bucket for website hosting. So I'm going to go back to VS Code, hit Ctrl C, and then I'm going to do npm run build. Alright, so it's done. So it basically creates a file or a folder called build, and it contains all the necessary files that we need for website hosting. So I'm going to go back to the S3 bucket and then upload everything in this folder. So hit here, upload, add files, inside build, open. And then we're going to upload a folder. Remember, when we select upload file, we only uploaded this file. We need to upload this folder as well. So I hit upload, hit yes. Okay, so everything is there. Now let's get the website URL. Go all the way to the bottom, and this is our website URL. So if I go to a new tab, paste it here, we should see our file upload system. And one thing you may notice is that this is unsecure, which means it's not HTTPS. I have a separate video that I talk about how to make the website secure to use HTTPS. So if you're interested, you can check out the link down below. So, but for now, I'll just leave it as is. And before we do a file upload, let's delete the one that we already have in our S3 bucket first. So click here. I just hit delete. So it's empty. And now if I do choose file, and then select the test file that we created earlier, hit open. It's still working. Hit upload. And that is working. And now if I go back to the S3 bucket, hit refresh, I should be able to see the data folder, and inside that I should have a test.txt file. And let me just download that just to take a look what is inside. And it has the same content except the timestamp is different. And this is it, everyone. I hope you have learned something. And if you like this video, I hope you can give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video.